A good-sized group of people came to the Human Services Building on Thursday night to hear stories from the graveyard. These were not scary stories, however. The program was an educational look at the history of gravestones in New England in general and in Burlington specifically, put on by the Burlington Historical Society. I went down to check it out and learn both about gravestones and why studying them is important.
I think that I have met more people that don't know a lot about our town. Somehow they don't realize how much history is really here. And by showing programs like this, it kind of makes people awake and maybe even want to walk through the cemetery.
Though the talk touched on gravestones from all three of Burlington's graveyards, the oldest and richest history was from the Second Parish burial ground.
The Second Parish burial ground, we don't call it a cemetery because it is 200 and people were buried there in Burlington when we were still part of Woburn for about 40 years before it was even, we had our own town in 1799. So there's just a lot of history there. Way in back, the very back, there was a slave in Burlington named Cuff, and he is buried there in the back. And I've done talk there a couple of times, and you get to know, who's there and what, and it's quite exciting to delve into history like that.
The presentation was given by Brenda Sullivan of the Gravestone Girls. I asked her about the group and what it does.
We're cemetery educators and historians. We lead cemetery tours to teach gravestone rubbing classes. I lecture about cemetery art and history and symbolism and create sculpted art pieces from the faces of old colonial New England gravestones.
So how does one get involved in an occupation such as this?
What I tell everybody is this is a hobby that ran amok. I grew up around here. I grew up in Massachusetts. My mother and grandmother took me to the family cemetery on a regular basis. I grew up in a house that was interested in art and history. You really can't live here in the New England area without having these spaces in just about every town. So I went in, I explored because of my love for art and history, and one thing just led to another, and it turns out, and I mean from the number of folks in the room tonight and at the majority of the programs that I lead, everybody's interested in the cemetery for one reason or another.
The talk featured pictures of New England gravestones, including many from Burlington. The focus was on the history of the stones, burial grounds, and how they have changed over time. She spent a lot of time looking at the symbolism of the images on the stones and how the themes evolved through the years. There was also some insight into why graveyards are designed the way they are, such as this tidbit.
This east-west axis orientation, which is a fancy way of talking about the way that they were put in the ground. There was a religious purpose even for that. This is facing west. This writing is facing west. The head of the body is actually here, behind the stone. And then the footstone would mark the end of the grave. So in that bed for eternity, you're doing something. You're waiting for something. And what you're waiting for is, according to the Christian religion, on Judgment Day, the Archangel Gabriel is going to come from the east, and he's going to sound his trumpet, calling the dead to rise, calling for the resurrection, and all the dead are going to, I'm on the wrong side, all the dead are going to sit up in their graves to answer the call of that trumpet. They're going to sit up in their graves facing east. This is a really important call. You do not want to miss this call.
I asked what she hopes people take away from the talks on the history of gravestones.
I want them to know that these are living history museums. They are free and open to the public. They are a valuable resource for information. They're a valuable resource for art. We are the oldest part of the country with these kind of surviving objects. They really tell a story about not just an individual, but a family, a society, a group at any particular point in time through the almost 400 years that we've been here.
Finally, she said inspiring people to see the artistic and historic values of gravestones helps preserve burial grounds and cemeteries.
These spaces need a lot of care, and if the community cares about them, then they will work to preserve them. So it's my hope that what they take away from here will inspire them to go and look, will inspire them to go do a cleanup project, found a friends group to do documentation or to do cleanups or work to have restoration done in spaces that need it.
At the Historical Society gathering in the Human Services Building, I'm B News Director Rich Hosford. Back to you in the studio.